Dear colleagues, I'm going to present you the experience of the use of the database in a very specific area, that is the judicial expert review. So this is the subject of this presentation. So the setting of the task, of the challenge. In cases when the disputes have to be negotiated in the court, the necessity appears to apply to ask the forensic experts to resolve such disputes that have experience in such matters. This is the specific example from my previous experience of judicial disputes. The court has set a challenge to set the availability or absence, the violation of the landing, growing of the fruit plants, in this case of apple trees, and decide whether the fertile layer was deteriorated due to the violation of agro-technical methods. On this slide you can see the picture of a specific land plot of one of the regions of Rostov Oblast. The specific feature is the initial data. First is administrative area, cadastral number of the land plot, the type of the land use. So in order to resolve this challenge, the task was divided into several directions. So the document from the court described the fabula, the task. The experts have the task to resolve. And then the expert is based on the materials that he gets from the court. Although to resolve the task, the information provided by the court is insufficient. For this reason, the expert has to use open sources of information. The first one is the result of the soil survey. They can be technical reports of soil review. They can be technical reports, more or less detailed. For example, specifying special features, some parameters. Sometimes it's a general description of the soil cover, its structure. Sometimes it's only a soil map. The second type of open source of information is public cadastral map. According to the legislation of the Russian Federation, part of the information concerning the land is open, so you can use it. The third type of information is archived information, for example, the data concerning the climate, the weather. And the fourth, in this case, it was public data that was carried out by agrochemical service of Rostov. And the previous presenters, they showed that they have such kind of information. I will not put much attention to the part that was highlighted before the break. I mean, creation of the project and work with ArcGIS and ArcMap. So I will avoid this. So you have seen this page already in the previous presentation. The methodology is the same. So to resolve the task set, the most important place occupies initial information, if it is available. The meaningful is to determine the type of the rock that formed the soil and the main features that characterize the soil of the specified parcel. These stages, they are preliminary before the expert examination takes place. So all the stages, they are just preparatory ones. The next unit belongs to the field works that are carried out by the expert himself. The specific feature of such works is that the expert cannot choose the time and the date to carry out his work. And on this slide, you can see the pictures of fruit trees that were pictured during various seasons. So some type of features can be not accessible for the testing, for the review. And then the findings of the expert can be not complete. So this is the specific feature of our judicial expertise against scientific research that is familiar to all of us. Then comes field expert review itself. Expert goes to the land plot by himself. He makes the observation of this plot. He takes necessary measurements, sampling of plant, soil, and any other required. So he takes all required samples that can enable to resolve the task. So if you remember, we had two issues. First, to find out whether there were deterioration of the fertile layer of soil due to the violation of the technology of landing, violation of the agri-technology. This task can be resolved by two ways. So to resolve this issue, you can use the agronome who leads the fruit planting. But I took another way. I took criminalistic way. As far as I am not agronome and I am not the fruit specialist, I use database of space shooting available in Google Earth program. Digital pictures with high accuracy. You can see the picture of this land plot with fruits of this specific territory. As you know, the database has space shootings that enables to carry out retrospective analysis. I selected the pictures that were taken at the moment of the garden establishment. Then I took the pictures where all trees were presented. And based on the space shootings, you can calculate the number of the trees. Then we can find the space shootings where you can see the gaps. So you can calculate the number of the missing trees. So in the table, the number is presented of the trees that dropped out, that are missing per year, per specified year. So by this, we can answer a question whether the trees are dying. Then the court has to decide who is guilty in this, that the trees are dying. The reason for the expertise was that the lease contract was terminated. As far as the owner of the land and the owner of the trees, he thought that the land leaser was violating the technology of the trees growing. And the court made the conclusion that the leaser, he violated the rules of the owner of the land. As far as the trees were dying prematurely and potential harvest became less due to the missing trees. The second part of the issue is related to the soil fertility. I took samples of agrochemical samples. I carried out tests of these samples in the within the laboratory, and then I have to answer the question whether the fertility of soil is decreasing. To answer this question, you need the initial data. So in this case, soil geographic database is of help. In case this database has relevant information. So the first part is over. The second part, the project for the recultivation of soils, of agricultural soils. Quite often, farms that are taken out from the use in order to mine the minerals on the territory of this land. So after mining is completed, these lands have to be returned to the farming land use. This is the project of land reclamation that was carried out together with the Rostechnadzor. So in order to make the project for the land reclamation, you need the initial data as well. So the stages are almost similar as they were described previously. Available archivic legacy maps for the soils, technical reports of the land survey, soil maps, findings of agrotechnical surveys, land use documentation, and the archives concerning the weather. In this case, another block of information is used as engineering geological surveys. So this is the real information concerning some specific land plot, where you can see the volume of the mining and the amount of the ground that is required to form a new layer. Then we create the project similar to what was presented earlier. So the points for the sampling are set. This is preliminary stage prior to the field surveys. Then you make the task, the field surveys. Project survey group comes to the specific pit. They make field surveys. They make the full profiles. Open pit, test pits, soil sampling, they make morphological description, and then they make the tests within the laboratories of the soils that are close to this pit. Then the technical solution is developed. Then we select the material in order to fulfill for the pit samples. We choose the undersoil layer and the soil layer that will form new soil for the land plot. This is the technical part for the land reclamation, and then we come to the biological part of the land reclamation that takes from 3 to 5 years in general, in average. So depending on the recovery of soil, the period can be extended. This case is interesting in terms of quite often that after land reclamation, the expert who doesn't know the history of the land plot make wrong judgment from the following soil tests. So I think that the soil geographic database can provide information for future, stating that in the past there were some violations in regard to this land plot, and this land plot was reclaimed consequently. So this is it in brief, the second stage. And I would like to highlight in brief the third part. This is the criminalistic work itself. I was the member of the expert review group of the Ministry of Defense to identify the remains of the holy person Paul Taganrogsky. We had the following task. We had to extract the body of that person, exhumation. In that place there were 8 bodies. And the remains, they were mixed, and the identification of the bodies was divided into 3 large units. In the first part, they were persons, anthropologists related to the medicine, who were involved. Then molecular genetic identification took place. As far as the first part relates to the morphological survey, where qualitative indices, where it is not based on qualitative indices. Molecular genetical tests failed to fulfill this task because the bodies were buried a long time ago, and there were almost no DNA for the test to carry out. The chemical analysis of the bones of the bodies took the decisive part of this work. So for the tests, we had 13 samples of the bones. So these bones, they were prepared in a special way for the testing. They were graded and pressed for the X-ray analysis. We carried out the overall analysis of the bones remains, as well as soil samples where these bones were found. To identify and separate bones, we had an idea that between the bones and the soil there is the transportation of the elements of bones and the soil. So all chemical elements were divided into three groups. Soil elements that predominantly exist in the soil, chemical elements prevailing in the bones, and trace elements that can exist in bones and in soil. After that, we estimated the relation of the chemical elements bones and soil, bones. And the results of the estimation is presented in this table, and this relevance helped us to identify the bones that were buried initially from those that were buried lately, on a later stage. Then we analyzed the various inclusions that were found in the grove. For example, in this case, the elements, the handles of the coffin, and we identified that these elements have high proportion of zinc and plumbum and lead. Chemical analysis of the soil showed that there are no high amounts of the lead and zinc. The example of the material from the coffin and some inclusions, including some contaminating material. So these are the lead handles of the coffin. This is the wood. So such approach helped us to identify the body, separate the body which belonged to the bones which belong to one body from another. Resolving the issues of components like lead and zinc in the material, we used open source materials related to the Taganrog soils contaminations. The specific features of the composition of the underground waters, and specific feature of chemical composition of the paint and other that was used during the burying of the body. I demonstrate this case so that we, soil expert, could understand, to demonstrate that we possess valuable information that can be used in various areas. And the more detailed information is available in SoilGeographic database. The fully and objectively outcomes will be provided.